Prapathakas 3 of the Chandogya Upanishad, translated by Max Müller, recording by Jyoti Taravanat. Third Prapathakas, First Kanda. The sun is indeed the honey of the Devas. The heaven is a crossbeam from which the sky hangs as a hive, and the bright vapours are the eggs of the bees. The eastern rays of the sun are the honey cells in front. The Rig verses are the bees. The Rig Veda sacrifice is the flower. The water of the sacrificial libations is the nectar of the flower. Those very Rig verses, then, as bees, brooded over the Rig Veda sacrifice the flower, and from it, thus brooded on, sprang as its nectar essence, fame, glory of countenance, vigour, strength, and health. That essence flowed forth and went towards the sun, and that forms what we call the red Rohita light of the rising sun. Second Kanda. The southern rays of the sun are the honey cells on the right. The Yajus verses are the bees. The Yajurveda sacrifice is the flower. The water of the sacrificial libations is the nectar of the flower. Those very Yajus verses, as bees, brooded over the Yajurveda sacrifice the flower, and from it, thus brooded on, sprang as its nectar essence, fame, glory of countenance, vigour, strength, and health. That flowed forth and went towards the sun, and that forms what we call the white Sukla light of the sun. Third Kanda. The western rays of the sun are the honey cells behind. The Saman verses are the bees. The Sama-veda sacrifice is the flower. The water is the nectar. Those very Saman verses, as bees, brooded over the Sama-veda sacrifice, and from it, thus brooded on, sprang as its nectar essence, fame, glory of countenance, vigour, strength, and health. That flowed forth and went towards the sun, and that forms what we call the dark Krishna light of the sun. Fourth Kanda. The northern rays of the sun are the honey cells on the left. The hymns of the Atharvangiras are the bees. The Itihasa Purana, the reading of the old stories, is the flower. The water is the nectar. Those very hymns of the Atharvangiras, as bees, brooded over the Itihasa Purana, and from it, thus brooded on, sprang as its nectar essence, fame, glory of countenance, vigour, strength, and health. That flowed forth and went towards the sun, and that forms what we call the extreme dark Parakrishnam light of the sun. Fifth Kanda. The upward rays of the sun are the honey cells above. The secret doctrines are the bees. Brahman, the Om, is the flower. The water is the nectar. Those secret doctrines, as bees, brooded over Brahman, the Om, and from it, thus brooded on, sprang as its nectar essence, fame, glory of countenance, brightness, vigour, strength, and health. That flowed forth and went towards the sun, and that forms what seems to stir in the centre of the sun. These, the different colours in the sun, are the essences of the essences. For the Vedas are essences, the best things in the world, and of them, after they have assumed the form of sacrifice, these, the colours rising to the sun, are again the essences. They are the nectar of the nectar. For the Vedas are nectar immortal, and of them these are the nectar. Sixth Kanda. On the first of these nectars, the red light which represents fame, glory of countenance, vigour, strength, health, the Vasus live, with Agni at their head. True, the Devas do not eat or drink, but they enjoy by seeing the nectar. They enter into that red colour, and they rise from that colour. He who thus knows this nectar becomes one of the Vasus, with Agni at their head. He sees the nectar and rejoices. And he too, having entered that color, rises again from that color. So long as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, so long does he follow the sovereign supremacy of the Vasus. Seventh Kanda. On the second of these nectars the Rudras live, with Indira at their head. True, the Devas do not eat or drink, but they enjoy by seeing the nectar. They enter into the white color, and they rise from that color. He who thus knows this nectar becomes one of the Rudras, with Indra at their head. He sees the nectar and rejoices. And he, having entered the color, rises again from that color. So long as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, twice as long does it rise in the south and set in the north. And so long does he follow the sovereign supremacy of the Rudras. Eighth Kanda. On the third of these nectars the Adityas live, with Varuna at their head. True, the Devas do not eat or drink, but they enjoy by seeing the nectar. They enter into that dark color, and they rise from that color. He who thus knows this nectar becomes one of the Adityas, with Varuna at their head. He sees the nectar and rejoices. And he, having entered that color, rises again from that color. So long as the sun rises in the south and sets in the north, twice as long does it rise in the west and set in the east. And so long does he follow the sovereign supremacy of the Adityas. Ninth Kanda. On the fourth of these nectars the Maruts live, with Soma at their head. True, the Devas do not eat or drink, but they enjoy by seeing the nectar. They enter into that very dark color, and they rise from that color. He who thus knows this nectar becomes one of the Maruts, with Soma at the head. He sees the nectar and rejoices. And he, having entered that color, rises again from that color. So long as the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, twice as long does it rise in the north and set in the south. And so long does he follow the sovereign supremacy of the Maruts. Tenth Kanda. On the fifth of these nectars the Sadhyas live, with Brahman at their head. True, the Devas do not eat or drink, but they enjoy by seeing the nectar. They enter into that color, and they rise from that color. He who thus knows this nectar becomes one of the Sadhyas, with Brahman at their head. He sees the nectar and rejoices. And he, having entered that color, rises again from that color. So long as the sun rises in the north and sets in the south, twice as long does it rise above and set below. And so long does he follow the sovereign power of the Sadhyas. 11th Kanda. When from thence he has risen upwards, he neither rises nor sets. He is alone standing in the center. And on this there is this verse: Yonder he neither rises nor sets at any time. If this is not true, ye gods, may I lose Brahman. And indeed, to him who thus knows this Brahma Upanishad, the secret doctrine of the Veda, the sun does not rise and does not set. For him there is day once and for all. This doctrine, beginning with third first Brahman, Hiranyagarbha, told to Prajapati, Virag, Prajapati to Manu, Manu to his offspring, Ikshavaku, etc. And the father told that doctrine of Brahman to Uddalaka Aruni. A father may therefore tell that doctrine of Brahman to his eldest son or to a worthy people. But no one should tell it to anybody else, even if he gave him the whole sea-girt earth, full of treasure. For this doctrine is worth more than that. Yea, it is worth more. 12th Kanda. The Gayatri Verse is everything whatsoever here exists. Gayatri indeed is speech, for speech sings forth Gayatri and protects Trayate, everything that here exists. That Gayatri is also the earth, for everything that here exists rests on the earth and does not go beyond. That earth again is the body in man, for in it the vital airs, pranas, which are everything, rest and do not go beyond. That body again in man is the heart within man, for in it the pranas, which are everything, rest and do not go beyond. That Gayatri has 4 feet and is sixfold, and this is also declared by a Rig verse, Rig Veda 10th 93. Such is the greatness of it, of Brahman under the disguise of Gayatri. Greater than it is the person Purusha. His feet are all things. The immortal with 3 feet is in heaven, that is, in himself. The Brahman, which has been thus described as immortal with 3 feet in heaven and as Gayatri, is the same as the ether which is around us. And the ether which is around us is the same as the ether which is within us. And the ether which is within us, that is the ether within the heart. That ether in the heart, as Brahman, is omnipresent and unchanging. He who knows this obtains omnipresent and unchangeable happiness. 13th Kanda. For that heart there are 5 gates belonging to the Devas, the senses. The eastern gate is the prana, up-breathing, that is the eye, that is Aditya, the sun. Let a man meditate on that as brightness, glory of countenance, and health. He who knows this becomes bright and healthy. The southern gate is the Vyana, back-breathing, that is the ear, that is the moon. Let a man meditate on that as happiness and fame. He who knows this becomes happy and famous. The western gate is the Apana, down breathing, that is speech, that is Agni, fire. Let a man meditate on that as glory of countenance and health. He who knows this becomes glorious and healthy. The northern gate is the Samana, on breathing, that is mind, that is Parjanya, rain. Let a man meditate on that as celebrity and beauty. He who knows this becomes celebrated and beautiful. The upper gates of the Udana, outbreathing, that is air, that is ether. Let a man meditate on that as strength and greatness. He who knows this becomes strong and great. These are the 5 men of Brahman, the doorkeepers of the Swarga, heaven world. He who knows these 5 men of Brahman, the doorkeepers of the Swarga world, in his family a strong son is born. He who thus knows these 5 men of Brahman as the doorkeepers of the Swarga world enters himself the Swarga world. Now that light which shines above this heaven, higher than all, higher than everything, in the highest world, beyond which there are no other worlds, that is the same light which is within man, and of this we have this visible proof. Namely, when we thus perceive by touch the warmth here in the body, and of it we have this audible proof. Namely, when we thus, after stopping our ears, listen to what is like the rolling of a carriage, or the bellowing of an ox, or the sound of a burning fire within the ears. Let a man meditate on this as the Brahman which is seen and heard. He who knows this becomes conspicuous and celebrated. Yeah, he becomes celebrated. 14th Kanda. All this is Brahman. Let a man meditate on that visible world as beginning, ending, and breathing in it, the Brahman. Now man is a creature of will. According to what his will is in this world, so will he be when he has departed this life. Let him therefore have this will and belief. The intelligent, whose body is spirit, whose form is light, whose thoughts are true, whose nature is like ether, omnipresent and invisible, from whom all works, all desires, all sweet odors and tastes proceed, he who embraces all this, who never speaks and is never surprised, he is my Self within the heart, smaller than a corn of rice, smaller than a corn of barley, smaller than a mustard seed, smaller than a canary seed, or the kernel of a canary seed. He also is my Self within the heart, greater than the earth, greater than the sky, greater than heaven, greater than all these worlds. He from whom all works, all desires, all sweet odors and tastes proceed, who embraces all this, who never speaks, and who is never surprised, he, my Self within the heart, is that Brahman, who I shall have departed from hence. I shall obtain him, that Self. He who has this faith has no doubt. Thus said Sandilya. Yeah, thus he said. 15th Kanda. The chest which has the sky for its circumference and the earth for its bottom does not decay, for the quarters are its sides, and heaven its lid above. That chest is a treasury, and all things are within it. Its eastern quarter is called Guhu, its southern Sahamana, its western Ragini, its northern Subhuta. The child of those quarters is Vayu, the air, and he who knows this, that the air is indeed the child of the quarters, never weeps for his sons. I know the wind to be the child of the quarters. May I never weep for my sons. I turn to the imperishable chest with such and such and such. I turn to the prana life with such and such and such. I turn to the bhu with such and such and such. I turn to the bhuva with such and such and such. I turn to the swa with such and such and such. When I said I turn to prana, then prana means all whatever exists here. To that I turn. When I said I turn to bhu, what I said is I turn to the earth, the sky, and heaven. When I said I turn to bhuva, what I said is I turn to Agni, fire, Vayu, air, Aditya, sun. When I said I turn to Swa, what I said is I turn to the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, and Sama-veda. That is what I said. Yeah, that is what I said. 16th Kanda. Man is sacrifice. His first 24 years are the morning libation. The Gayatri has 24 syllables. The morning libation is offered with Gayatri hymns. The Vasus are connected with that part of the sacrifice. The pranas, the five senses, are the Vasus, for they make all this to abide. Vayasanti. If anything ails him in that early age, let him say, Ye pranas, ye Vasus, extend this my morning libation unto the midday libation, that I, the sacrificer, may not perish in the midst of the pranas or Vasus. Thus he recovers from his illness and becomes whole. The next 44 years are the midday libation. The Trish Ub has 44 syllables. The midday libation is offered with Trish Ub hymns. The Rudras are connected with that part of it. The pranas are the Rudras, for they make all this to cry Rodayanti. If anyone ails him in that second stage, let him say, Ye pranas, ye rudras, extend this my midday libation unto the third libation, and that I, the sacrificer, may not perish in the midst of the pranas or rudras. Thus he recovers from his illness and becomes whole. The next 48 years are the third libation. The Gayatri has 48 syllables. The third libation is offered with Gayatri hymns. The Adityas are connected with that part of it. The pranas are the Adityas, for they take up all this Adati. If anything ails him in that third age, let him say, Ye pranas, ye Adityas, extend this my third libation unto the full age, that I, the sacrificer, may not perish in the midst of the pranas or Adityas. Thus he recovers from his illness and becomes whole. Mahidasa Aitreya, the son of Aitara, who knew this, said, addressing a disease, Why dost thou afflict me, as I shall not die by it? He lived 116 years, that is, 24 plus 44 plus 48. He too, who knows this, lives on to 116 years. 17th Kanda. When a man who is the sacrificer hungers, thirsts, and abstains from pleasures, that is the Diksha, initiatory rite. When a man eats, drinks, and enjoys pleasures, he does it with the Upasadas, the sacrificial days on which the sacrificer is allowed to part with the Stuta Sastra, hymns sung and recited at the sacrifices. Penance, liberality, righteousness, kindness, truthfulness, these form the Dakshinas, gifts bestowed on priests, etc. Therefore, when they say, There will be a birth, and that there has been a birth, words used at the Soma sacrifice, and really meaning, He will pour out the Soma juice, and He has poured out the Soma juice. That is His new birth. His death is the Avabhrita ceremony, when the sacrificial vessels are carried away to be cleansed. Gora Angirasa, after having communicated this view of the sacrifice to Krishna, the son of Devaki, and he never thirsted again after other knowledge, said, Let a man, when his end approaches, take refuge with this triad. Thou art the imperishable, Thou art the unchangeable, Thou art the edge of prana. On this subject there are two Rig verses, Rig Veda 8.6.30. When they see within themselves the ever-present light of the old seed of the world, the Sat, the highest, which is lighted in the brilliant Brahman, Rig Veda 1st 50.10. Perceiving above the darkness of ignorance the higher light in the sun, as the higher light within the heart, the bright source of light and life among the gods, we have reached the highest light, the highest light. 18th Kanda. Let a man meditate on mind as Brahman. That is said with reference to the body. Let a man meditate on the ether as Brahman. This is said with reference to the Devas. Thus both the meditation which has reference to the body and the meditation which has reference to the Devas has been taught. That Brahman mind has 4 feet quarters. Speech is 1 foot, breath is 1 foot, the eye is 1 foot, the ear is 1 foot. So much with reference to the body. Then with reference to the gods, Agni fire is 1 foot, Vayu air is 1 foot, Aditya sun is 1 foot. The quarters are 1 foot. Thus both the worship which has reference to the body and the worship which has reference to the Devas has been taught. Speech is indeed the 4th foot of Brahman. That foot shines with Agni fire as its light, and warms. He who knows this shines and warms through his celebrity fame and glory of countenance. Breath is indeed the fourth foot of Brahman. That foot shines with Vayu air as its light, and warms. He who knows this shines and warms through his celebrity, fame, and glory of countenance. The eye is indeed the fourth foot of Brahman. That foot shines with Aditya, sun, as its light, and warms. He who knows this shines and warms through his celebrity, fame, and glory of countenance. The ear is indeed the fourth foot of Brahman. That foot shines with the quarters as its light, and warms. He who knows this shines and warms through his celebrity, fame, and glory of countenance. 19th Kanda. Aditya, the sun, is Brahman. This is the doctrine, and this is the fuller account of it. In the beginning, this was non existent. It became existent. It grew. It turned into an egg. The egg lay for the time of a year. The egg broke open. The two halves were one of silver and the other of gold. The silver one became this earth, the golden one the sky, the thick membrane of the white the mountains, the thin membrane of the yolk the mist with the clouds, the small veins the rivers, the fluid the sea. And what was born from it? That was Aditya, the sun. When he was born, shouts of hurrah arose, and all beings arose, and all things which they desired. Therefore, whenever the sun rises and sets, shouts of hurrah arise, and all beings arise, and all things which they desire. If anyone, knowing this, meditates on the sun as Brahman, pleasant shouts will approach him and will continue. Yeah, they will continue. End of Prapathakas 3. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat.